In this functional movement analysis, we will analyze 3 different lifts: the stoop lift, the deep squat, and the stance lift. Our functional movement is lifting groceries from the ground. This takes place in a sagittal plane, which includes shoulder flexion, elbow flexion, knee flexion and extension, hip flexion, and ankle dorsiflexion. The primary muscles used include anterior deltoid, action is shoulder flexion, concentric is when placing groceries in trunk, eccentric when picking up groceries off the ground with arm extended down, biceps brachii, action elbow flexion, concentric when bending elbow to lift groceries up, transverse abdominis, action is stabilizer of the core, concentric is throughout the whole lift to help stabilize the core, and that will be the same for each lift, so that will not be repeated for the other 2 lifts. Iliopsoas muscles, action hip flexion, concentric when flexing hip down to lift groceries, eccentric when standing back up after grabbing groceries. Quads, action knee extension, concentric when standing back up from lift, eccentric when bending knees to pick up groceries. Hamstrings and gastrocnemius both do knee flexion. Hamstrings, concentric is when bending knees to pick up groceries, eccentric is when standing back up from lift. Gastrocnemius, concentric is when flexing knee to pick up groceries, eccentric when extending knee to come back up from lift. Anterior tibialis, action dorsiflexion, concentric when bending down to pick up groceries, eccentric when going back up from lift. Primary joints include the shoulder, that does flexion, elbow, flexion, knee, flexion and extension, hip flexion, ankle dorsiflexion. The next lift we will analyze is the deep squat. It takes place in a sagittal plane and includes shoulder flexion, elbow flexion and extension, knee extension and flexion, hip flexion, and ankle dorsiflexion. The primary muscles include anterior deltoid, which action is shoulder flexion, and concentric is reaching out for groceries on ground and preparing for lift. The biceps brachii, which action is elbow flexion, concentric is flexing the elbows to bring pack of water to center of mass. Eccentric is when elbow and shoulder is extended to reach for pack of water. Triceps brachii, action elbow extension, concentric reaching for groceries on ground to prepare for lift. Iliopsoas, action hip flexion, concentric when flexing hip down to lift groceries, eccentric when standing back up after grabbing groceries. Quads, action knee extension, concentric when standing back up from lift, eccentric when bending knees to pick up groceries. Once again, the hamstrings and gastroc do knee flexion, hamstrings, concentric when bending knees to pick up groceries, eccentric when standing back up from lift, gastroc, concentric when flexing knees to pick up groceries, eccentric when extending knee to come back up from lift. Anterior tibialis, action dorsiflexion, concentric when bending down to pick up groceries, eccentric when going back up from lift. Primary joints include shoulder, which does flexion, elbow extension and flexion, knee flexion and extension, hip flexion, and ankle dorsiflexion. The last lift you will see is the stance lift. It also takes place in a sagittal plane with shoulder flexion, elbow flexion and extension, knee flexion and extension, hip flexion, ankle dorsiflexion, and plantar flexion. Primary muscles include anterior deltoid, action is shoulder flexion, flexing the shoulders forward to place pack of water in the trunk. Biceps brachii, action elbow flexion, concentric during elbow flexion to carry the pack of water, eccentric when extending the elbow to place the water in trunk. Triceps brachii, action elbow extension, concentric during elbow extension to place pack of water in trunk, eccentric when carrying waters with elbow flexed. Iliopsoas muscles, action hip flexion, concentric when flexing hip to move forward towards trunk, eccentric standing upright preparing for lift. Quads, action knee extension, concentric slight extension during lift, eccentric during knee flexion when moving forward towards car. Hamstrings, action knee flexion, concentric when bending the knee forward to help provide stability, eccentric during knee extension. Gastrocnemius, action plantar flexion, concentric when propelling body forward towards trunk. Anterior tibialis, action dorsiflexion, concentric during full weight bearing of the foot. Eccentric, eccentrically contracts to help control plantar flexion of the ankle. And the primary joints include shoulder, which does flexion, elbow flexion and extension, knee flexion and extension, hip flexion, and ankle dorsiflexion and plantar flexion. Thanks for watching our video.